Hello and welcome back to Life at Leyton, the podcast where we explore the people and stories that shape our business. And in this episode, I have a special treat for you because I have the entire Irish team on the episode today. Just before we get into it, I just thought a round of brief introductions would be in order. So we're joined by a couple of members of our consulting team, Michael Cullen, Ashley Patterson and Kieran Dougal. We also have a number of members of our sales team, Conal McAniff, David Kozak and Matthew Coakley, and we also have our head of tax, Paul Hegarty. And we're going to approach this a little bit differently. I'm actually going to go around the room one by one, try and learn a little bit more about each of you individually, your background, your experience, and ultimately what drew you to Leyton. And I might just mix it up at the end to lob a quick question to the group overall, just to have a little bit of a group discussion to finish off. And hopefully there'll be lots of learnings and fun along the way. So I'll kick things off by with yourself, Dave. So you joined us from a much more traditional SaaS sales background, and you actually relocated from Spain back to Dublin for this role. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about that and kind of what drew you to Leyton in the first place?
Yeah, thanks very much, Brian. The move back from Spain to Dublin was definitely a big change for me, both personally and professionally. Firstly, I didn't realise how much I accumulated over my year in Spain. So deciding what to sell and bring over became a bit of a larger logistical process than initially planned. But the moving process itself had some unforeseen challenges where I had some delays, which held me up in Spain for an additional week. But thanks to how supportive and accommodating everybody at Leyton has been, I was able to start a week later, unfortunately missing my week of induction, but was very lucky that I was able to pick it back up 2 months later and visit the wider team in London, and also start with some other members that were joining the Dublin office. So it was a great opportunity to sort of mingle with everybody starting at Leyton at the Dublin office. The Ireland team has been very, very supportive. I think we are a very supportive office as well. So it's been a really good start for us. Really great start considering how large the organisation it is and how small the Dublin office is, but being able to get so much support from the other entities outside of Ireland. It's been an interesting transition from SaaS sales into R&D tax credits. I'll be honest with you, I never really heard of R&D tax credits too long before I joined. I know yourself and myself, Brian, spoke about it a number of times prior to me joining, but you really don't understand it until you're actually in the thick of it, in the weeds of it. So I know we spoke numerous times, but until I started at Leyton, I really understood the magnitude and the benefit that the R&D tax credits have for businesses across Ireland. Working in SaaS, very different. I was used to working on something tangible. I could demo a product, show to a client what we're doing. With R&D, it's definitely more consultative. It's about understanding clients' innovation, their technical projects, and how that aligns with funding opportunities. Plus, we're working with so many different sectors, so it does take a lot of learning, especially at the start when we're speaking to a variety of different sectors and having to know about their day-to-day and their operations. So it definitely took a big shift in mindset, but that's actually been really one of the most rewarding parts, learning to have that more strategic, those long-term conversations and really seeing then the impact our work has on helping businesses grow has been very rewarding.
Absolutely. It's like what we talk about, right? That we establish ourselves as the experts in the space, that we're, as you said, taking a much more consultative approach to these conversations. And it's about kind of, as you always say, embedding ourselves into the business long term as a strategic partner and kind of, learning as much as we can along the way. You and I, just to let the audience behind the curtain a little bit, you and I have been friends for more than a decade at this stage. And one of the things that we've always kind of, I guess, like one thing that's always kind of drawn us to each other, and one thing's like something that we've had in common is that kind of that hunger, that ambition, that entrepreneurial mindset. And as luck would have it, one of the core pillars here at Leyton that we all try to kind of hold ourselves to is that idea of an entrepreneurial mindset, of the idea of entrepreneurship as a whole. And I think if I'm not mistaken, that might be, you know, another element of what drew you to Leighton in the first place, because of your history with running businesses in Dublin prior to your move to Spain. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. On the entrepreneurial side of things, I've been running my own music entertainment business for several years. The business was set up stemming from my passion for music, which started at a very young age. Now, my dad is a classically trained musician, so he did try to, as any father would in that position, try to teach him some classical instruments such as piano or violin, and unfortunately, that just didn't stick with me. And unfortunately for my parents, I decided and requested a drum kit from my parents at age 15. And that's definitely not something my dad had planned for me, for sure. And especially my neighbors, who I do publicly apologize to here on this platform if they're listening. But yeah, I mean, I was in a number of bands across the years. My journey into event organization started when one of my earlier bands, had the challenge of booking gigs. So promoters were very difficult to engage with, you know, especially if you're an up and coming band. They don't really want to hear from you, especially if your social media isn't to a certain degree, you know, that'll kind of match up to their expectations. So obviously, when you're starting out, you're not going to have that many fans. So I took it upon myself to engage directly with venues, which eventually led me to hosting my own events across numerous venues in Dublin and then expanding across Ireland. So this pretty much was my introduction into sales, you know, understanding the mindset of different stakeholders, venue owners, promoters, and ticket buyers. And I realized the importance of building relationships and credibility, not just selling to hit a target. So this is something that I've applied to a lot of my recent jobs and of course at Leighton as well.
Absolutely, and I think it comes down to a lot of those skill sets that you were refining over the years, now translate in a very real way in this role. And I can't wait to see what you achieve over the next couple of years. And what I'm hearing is that we might need to have a conversation about live band karaoke for summer 2027 Christmas party, right?
Well, I have pitched the idea to Dara already. I don't think he felt he was ready for that for this year. So absolutely, next year could be on the table.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate that. I'm
Pleasure.
going to move on to Matthew next, as you joined shortly after Dave. And when we talk about skill sets and I guess one master networker onto the next, Matthew, you joined us from the Dublin Chamber. From our conversations that we've had offline, it seemed like a big part of that role was to get into the rooms with the right people, establish the right connections, the right relationships, and kind of leveraging that to I guess to build that momentum for the chamber. But where do you think there's been the most kind of crossover between how you're approaching your day to day at Leighton versus what you were doing previously?
Yeah, thanks, Breen, and that's a great question. Just to maybe give you some background about the Dublin Chamber. So, Dublin Chamber was, established in 1782. So, I know Leighton we're celebrating 30 years next year, but the Chamber's been around for quite a while longer. Essentially, what the Chamber was, it's the largest business network in Ireland with about 1,200 different member companies representing about quarter of a million staff across the greater Dublin area. And essentially, the job of the chamber was twofold. One of them was to provide business services. So we had a range of different business to business networking events that companies could attend to connect with fellow business leaders and to sell products and to form relationships. And then the other side of the house then was lobbying. So essentially, we represented the interests of Dublin businesses to both local and national level government. One thing that's quite similar with Leyton in terms of the sales process is getting in rooms and speaking with companies from a variety of different sectors and industries. So, for example, in the chamber, we had a member probably in every different sector or industry that you can think of in Ireland. And when you joined Leyton, from an R&D tax credit perspective, you could be on a call at 9 o'clock with a precision engineering firm. 10 o'clock, then you could be on a call with an architectural firm, and 3 o'clock you're wrapping the call up with a poultry farm. So I suppose one commonality between my time at the Dublin Chamber and my time at Leyton is that you're selling with people from a wide variety of industries, and by having that different sector exposure, you're then able to formulate viewpoints on what's important for decision makers in that sector, and really drive through the value in terms of what Dublin Chamber and now what Leyton can provide.
Absolutely. I mean, sounds great. I mean, what would you say now that you kind of touched on the similarities between the two? What do you think was the biggest difference? And I guess as a follow up to that, what drew you to Leighton in the first place?
So maybe I'll address the question what drew me to Leyton in the first place first. So at the time, I was actually very happy with my role inside the Dublin Chamber. I had the management responsibilities of a team of three underneath me. I got on very well with the senior leadership team. And at the time, I was kind of in a crossroads of my life because I was waiting to get the keys to my house, and I just got married. I just got engaged. So I'm getting married next year. So when the conversation came up to interview with Leyton, while I was certainly interested, I was thinking on whether it is the time now, with all the other changes in my life, to do a career change as well. What really actually drew me to Leyton and what made the decision a lot easier for me was having that first initial meeting with Dara Gaffney. So me and Dara met for lunch for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I felt like I was more interviewing him than he was interviewing me during that conversation. And only really after I joined, I understood that when you go into a company, there's kind of an expectation, and then there's the reality of what actually goes on in that company. From the first week I was in London for my induction week, the reality of Leyton and its capabilities and its size and its willingness and um, resources that they have in order to upskill and train their sales staff really exceeded my expectation of what I was walking into. The second part of that question, with relation to the chamber and some of the biggest differences, I would say that when you're selling a chamber membership, essentially you're showing them the benefits and the platform that the chamber provides. And if they go and if they engage, there's a possibility that through the networking and through the resources that we provide, they might be able to influence policy, win new business and grow their reputation. With Leyton, it's a little bit different. So essentially what we're doing is we're providing R&D tax credits. So the conversation is different because it's not if you do these things, you might win some new business. It's generally me going into a business that hasn't claimed or that has claimed, trying to get them to understand that a lot of the activities and projects they have internally will actually qualify for R&D tax relief. And, you can get R&D tax credit relief for kind of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in some cases. So it's just a different conversation and the value proposition is different. But in terms of the process to close those deals and to bring in new business, there's a lot of similarities.
Absolutely. No, totally understand that. I mean, we're very lucky to have you both, yourself and Dave, on the team. You're coming to us with, such a varied, you know, varied level of experience and different backgrounds and like as I said, it's, I guess the theme of today's chat is around, transferable skill sets, and I think you both have a lot to bring to the table. So I appreciate you sharing that, Matthew. And I'm actually going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk to Connell next. Connell is, he doesn't need any introduction amongst us, but he's our first SD hire here in Dublin, and he's been off to an absolute flyer and really making a name for himself since only joining a few months ago. So I guess the question is similar to yourself, with yourself, Connell. What do you think drew you to Leyton? Do you want to tell us a little bit about maybe kind of yourself and your background prior to joining the company, and then ultimately maybe what surprised you the most about joining a team like this?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So I'm currently in month 4 at Leyton, and this is my first office job outside of university. So I think you come in with an idea that it's going to be very daunting, and I'm going to be like a fish out of water, and it's going to take me a long time to get into the swing of things. But it has been the complete opposite. I've hit the ground running, and that is a credit to my team in Dublin, my team in London, and the enablement team. It's a very sort of collaborative culture, and there is an element of competitiveness amongst the sales teams, but it is a great level of competitiveness. It doesn't come with a cost, and we're all here to help each other at the end of the day. And I think that's what ultimately drew me to Leyton. It's very exciting to be part of a company at this stage of its growth journey. Like, there is only a few of us in the Dublin office at the minute, and it is exciting in the way that I feel like my work every day is directly contributing towards the success of the Irish office, and that makes coming into work every day a little bit more exciting, knowing that I'm playing a part in Leyton Ireland's growth journey. Another element that drew me towards Leyton was definitely the value and emphasis they place on training their staff. Like, if I'm going for a commercial executive or sales executive role, I want to be the best version of that I can be. And I knew looking into Leyton prior to the interview that they did place a lot of time. Like, I am in month 4 and I'm still receiving regular checkups from the enablement team. And everyone across all the UK offices and our Irish office, everyone's so generous with their time. Everyone's willing to help me if I have a question. It doesn't get brushed over. They sit with me, they go through everything, and I really value that because it helps me become a better version of what I want to do. And I knew, similar to what Matthew mentioned, obviously I'm out of university. I was doing interviews for a number of companies in Dublin and Ireland. I knew as soon as I sat in that room with Dara Gaffney and Jack Hankey, I came out of that interview knowing that I wanted to work for Leyton because of how genuine they seemed and how they explained the position of the Irish office, and I knew I wanted to be part of something in its foundations. It's fulfilling, to put it the simplest way.
And then just like, that's great. I mean, honestly, I think we all definitely were drawn to this opportunity to, be part of this early stage of the Irish office, the Leyton Ireland office growth journey, but knowing that we have that support of the global group behind us every step of the way is definitely, it provides a little bit of comfort and peace of mind for sure. And I guess just to go back to that other part of it as well, is there anything that kind of caught you off guard or was a bit surprising when taking on a role like this for the first time?
Yeah, as just to circle back, I had an idea. I didn't get to do any work placement with my degree, and I didn't go in to do any internships. So I had an idea of how a sales office would be. It was the complete opposite. I thought I had an image in my head that I would be uncomfortable in the office and everyone would be so much better than I would be. But if anyone that's been in the Dublin office knows it's a great place to be. Like, I look forward to coming into the office and working in the office because of how chatty and friendly everyone is. The consultants, the salespeople, our managers, even going over to the London office, everyone makes an effort to stop and say hello. I think that's what shocked me the most. I thought everyone would sort of look past me, being sort of bottom of the ladder in terms of the sales team, but it's not the case completely. Like, everyone gives me the time of day, and I think that's the biggest shock, how well I fit in.
No, I think you're very humble. I think part of the reason why you've been able to get off to such a fast start is because you've been able to just throw yourself into it, like no safety net, no hesitation, and you've set the bar high month over month. You're vastly outperforming any kind of expectation, and I think you very much earned your right on the and your rightful place on the team from day one. It feels like. So very excited to see where things will go for yourself, Connell, because I've no doubt it's only going to go from strength to strength from here. So thanks for sharing that. No worries.
Thanks, Brian.
No worries. So I guess this shows my own bias as a salesperson that I started off this episode by specifically going one by one to each member of the sales team. But we're going to shift the energy a little bit towards the consulting side of the business now. And we have a number of people that I'm excited for you all as an audience to meet. First of all, I'd like to introduce Ashley. She joined us from a different company up in Belfast that I'm sure she'll tell you all about. She joins us from a much more kind of applied sciences background that, again, I think she'd be better suited to explain to you. But I'd be very curious, given that, you go from such a vastly different kind of working environment into the likes of R&D consulting. Like, what was it that kind of encouraged that change? And then, similarly to the theme of today's episode, what drew you specifically to kind of taking a chance on Leyton?
Well, in terms of my background, so yeah, I studied biochemistry at Queen's, and as part of that degree, I did a placement year with a local diagnostics company. And when I left there, they had offered me a job to come back to. So I was in quite a nice position in final year where I was writing my dissertation and had a job sort of lined up, whereas everyone else was having to put in applications and so on. So that was nice. So yeah, I started in the diagnostics company. And I suppose there's a bit of background on what they do. They have various divisions, food, toxicology, but my role was in the clinical space. So that was developing various clinical diagnostic tests for variety of hormones, fertility, thyroid function, and for vitamins, just to diagnose various health disorders. In terms of, I spent about 5 years working there and progressed up from a clinical scientist to a team leader. And then ultimately, I think it just came to a point in my career where I was ready for a new challenge. And to be honest, I'd never heard of R&D tax credits before. I came across the role. I remember sitting on, I think it was nijobs.com, and I just typed in R&D just to see what came up. And this role came up, and I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting, because I, as part of my role in Randox, I did work with some external stakeholders in terms of like external collaborations, projects with other universities, research organizations, and so on. And I enjoyed that. I also felt like I could be a good fit for it because I had experience of working to meet regulatory requirements, which obviously lines up quite nicely with our role in ensuring that obviously client projects meet R&D criteria. So there's a number of things that made me think, okay, well, I think I have transferable skills that will allow me to do this job well, and I like the idea of hearing about the interest in research and development that other companies are doing, not just in diagnostics and medical devices, but across a number of industries. So yeah, as you say, I kind of took a leap on that one because it was such a difference going from a lab-based environment to what's essentially a desk job working with external stakeholders. But I took the chance and it paid off because in the other company I spent 3.5 years there. helping innovative companies maximize their R&D investments across life science, agriculture, and food and drink industries. Obviously, given that the island of Ireland as a whole is a big agricultural hub, I find that quite interesting. Agriculture wasn't something I ever encountered in university, but it's something that I kind of learned along the way as I've worked in R&D tax credits. And you wouldn't think it, but there's a lot more science to agriculture than you think. I mean, even just take growing, in poultry, for example, growing chickens, the lighting has an effect on their muscle growth. So yeah, I find that quite interesting. So yeah, during my time there, I've built up experience of working on claims both for HMRC and Revenue's R&D tax credit scheme, and then working on any inquiries that came in too. So ultimately, after I think 3.5 years there, again, just found myself looking for maybe a new challenge, which leads me on to then, I suppose, your other question, which is, why Leyton, or what sort of drew me to Leyton? And I think the answer to that is threefold really. So firstly, obviously, Leyton being a global company with a lot of experience in the R&D tax credit space. I mean, given it's been operating for over 20 years, I knew it would have the resources to enable me to continue to build my knowledge, because I think that was the challenge I was ultimately wanting to address. Was I want to push myself in terms of my capabilities and my knowledge within R&D tax credits. And so I knew sort of Leyton would have the resources there to enable me to do that. Secondly, it was obviously such an exciting opportunity to be part of the initial growth in the Ireland team, being able to share my expertise and working under both HMRC and Revenue's R&D tax credit scheme. Given that a lot of companies will have entities that can claim under both schemes. And then just being given the opportunity to shape how we interact with clients based on, my experience of what works and what doesn't work, and how best to deliver the work, again, based on, my experience with clients, whether that's client touch points, how we approach calls with clients, encouraging site visits. And then I suppose the third point then is to progress within Leyton, you don't need to pursue people management. Whilst I did that in my previous job, I also realised I don't think that's actually the right fit for me. Whereas Leyton have their subject matter expert pathway, which is something I'm looking to pursue.
Great. I mean, I think it's fair to say that one of the things everyone that I have met in my almost 12 months here at Leyton is that we all kind of have a certain level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and I think that you understanding kind of the path that's right for you, and Leyton kind of standing behind you and saying, right, well, if that's where you want to go, we have something in place to encourage that. I think it's great to hear that. I mean, I wish you the best, and I can only imagine that I'll be hounding you with some more claims down the line as well. So if and I'll actually shift over now to Kieran. So what our audience might not know is that Kieran, yourself and Ashley actually joined us at the same time from the same company previously. And I know that from our conversations, honestly, I really enjoy talking to you about these things offline in terms of things like process-driven improvements and the importance of kind of getting your hands dirty and just throwing yourself into things. You really do come across as quite a kind of knowledgeable and learn by doing type of person, if you like. And I'd love for everyone to benefit from hearing a little bit more about that, and about about kind of your approach to that, your ethos when it comes to some of those frameworks that we have discussed offline, and how you think it's kind of helped you now that you're a few months in the door here at Leyton.
Yeah, good question, Brian. There, a lot to unpack, I suppose. Obviously, we've previously had conversations that I think a lot of my work ethic and approach to problem solving or day-to-day business comes from the educational background. So after finishing my A-levels, I didn't go to uni full-time. Like a lot of people working in consultancy, I think there's an almost an elitist view of your academic background, with so many people with PhDs, MBAs, professorships, and then they're coming into consultancy.
I went and did an apprenticeship program. So I was 4 days a week in the workplace. It was an aerospace manufacturer, and then 1 day a week at college. And that sustained through a foundation degree, through my bachelor's, and then I actually finished my MBA, my own MBA, at the start of this year, February, and I've done it part time again. But I think that.
Congrats.
Oh, cheers! I think that immediate mindset we are thrown in at the deep end and forced to do, and you don't get this time to sort of tread water in theory, really can drive accelerated problem solving. The apprenticeship and the sort of the dual approach to learning is something I'm a massive fan of. I've done a lot of talks and promotional events through schools and colleges to direct people towards them, because much better than getting the degree and getting paid 4 days a week and not having uni fees out the back of it. But I think that approach where you can take something that you're learning in a classroom on a Monday and go into work on a Tuesday morning and immediately start applying it is hugely beneficial. You don't have a 4-year delay where you're trying to recall something you learnt in the first year of uni. But also, what you learn in theory is totally different from what you apply in practice. So you need to start trying things, testing things, and making mistakes, and being able to evolve through that iterative cycle of problem solving. And I don't think you can learn that just through theory. It takes you to jump straight into a problem. And just to touch on what other people have talked about and what you mentioned in terms of problem solving and continuous improvement, it's a phrase that's banded about, especially more so in modern workplaces, continuous improvement and lean and customer focus or whatever other buzzword you want to put on it. But very few people actually take it seriously. Very few people have the humility, I'll say, to sit down and scrutinise the work that they're doing and point out how it could be better. I always remember getting told the best mindset for improvement is a healthy dissatisfaction with the status quo. And that's what I've found coming into Leyton, is that everybody's very open to have conversations about how things could be better. Nobody has any egos when you start to mention how things could be improved. And meeting other people in the Irish team that are, I'd say, just as obsessive as myself over getting involved in the small details. So it's been great to come into the Leyton team.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like you and I have already had several long conversations around some of those things, especially when it comes to lean and how that applies to modern business. I think the last we checked, you had 400 plus books on the shelves around that topic. So
yeah, that's maybe that obsessive nature coming out a bit too much. I think I'm gonna have to get a second house here to put them in.
No, but absolutely. Look, we're all going to benefit from having yourself around. I think the quote of the episode so far is that healthy dissatisfaction with the status quo, and I think we're going to kind of get off of this conversation, have a think about how we're going to be able to contribute to that going forward, so and improve it for the better. So look, I really appreciate that perspective, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again a lot in future episodes of the podcast as well. So I guess I focus primarily now on, as we said, we started off the episode with a couple of conversations with the members of our sales team. We then shifted more to kind of consultant focus, but actually this is yet another layer deeper, because I'm now about to introduce the audience to two of the most senior, the most tenured, and honestly the most capable members of our team here in Ireland, with a vast wealth of experience in their chosen fields. No pressure, but I'm going to start with yourself, Paul. I know that your background and experience in all things tax and all things accountancy is second to none, and I'd just be very curious to hear your own perspective of, well, first of all, a bit more about your background and kind of how you got to where you are today, but also kind of as to keep with the same theme, what drew you to taking a chance on Leyton versus anything else that you could be doing given your experience?
Thanks, Bria. I'm a chartered accountant and a chartered tax consultant. So My background is in software industry as well, and I have a large experience in the property development industry as well. So across tax, accountancy, software, and construction, I have a large, broad experience across all these industries. So I was covering all tax heads within my role as an accountant and a tax advisor. So I was drawn to Leyton. I was actually going to take a career break, and when Leyton approached me, and I've always wanted to get into the role of R&D and specialise in R&D and capital allowances, considering my construction background. I've been an accountant and tax advisor going back over 20 years. So that takes me back to when R&D was first introduced in 2024. So I've been dealing with R&D queries, dealing with R&D, well, since it was 2024, so it's now 22 years. In the industry of the software industry, it was actually a ticketing industry. So I was actually selling the tickets for David on his behalf for his bands. We had a ticketing software business, and then I was first introduced to R&D then as claiming it in an industry role. And then I went back into accountancy practice, and within that practice, then I was more introduced to larger clients dealing with R&D, and I was kind of frustrated with it a little bit at the time, because at the time, companies that were making large corporation tax profits, they were able to offset all their R&D tax credit against their CT profits, whereas small organizations that were making losses, they were getting their R&D tax credit split over 3 years. So they were at a distinct advantage at the time. So then Finance Act 2022 introduced that split where you couldn't utilize all your R&D tax credit against your CT profits, and you were able to, which more helped smaller companies, that they could utilize a larger amount of their R&D tax credit against their and get it as a cash refund or against their CT liabilities or other tax liabilities. So the reason why then I was covering all tax heads within in accountancy practices. So I was covering VAT, RCT, succession planning, income tax, corporation tax. So I wanted just to specialise, and so Leyton approached me, and I thought this was the best move for me at the time. I really was interested in their growth development. I could see the potential that they're the largest R&D company in the UK, and they were getting reintroduced to the Irish market after being taken over by Deloitte 11 years ago. So they were being reintroduced, and I could just see the potential because of the increase in the R&D tax credit in 2024 up to 30%, and now for 2026 up to 35% of the R&D qualifying expenditure. So I just seen the potential there that the Irish government were really pushing the R&D tax credit, and I just really wanted to stay in that space. There is a bolt-on then that is the knowledge development box, and I have intense experience on that as well. So I just wanted to specialise in those three areas: R&D, capital allowances, and knowledge development box, and that's really what was the reason why I was drawn to Leyton.
Fair enough. I mean, I honestly think that you're a very humble person. You're very, you'll never be the loudest in the room, but I know that we are very lucky to have you here, and that you're already being pulled into all sorts of conversations with existing clients, upcoming clients. I think you're gonna have your hands full over the next couple of years. So I think, given your specific interest in specializing in those areas, I think you're going to get plenty of exposure and an opportunity to do that. So definitely, excited to see what happens with you over these next couple of years and beyond. So Michael has joined us from 14 years at a very reputable company as the head of R&D. I'm sure he'll be able to tell you a bit more about that than I would. But also, he's coming just like everyone else on this call today. coming to us with a very specific, very finely tuned skill set. And I know you have a number of formative experiences that you've had that have kind of brought you to this moment in time. I guess I'd first of all would love to hear a bit more about your background and kind of all your experience that's led you to kind of where you are today, and then to switch it up a little bit, since you made such a change from such a senior position in your previous company into a very kind of different role, kind of what advice would you have for people out there that are considering a kind of a career change into something they've never really done before?
Great to be on the podcast with you today. Yeah, just for the first question, I suppose, kind of echo a little bit of Kieran's journey. Like I would have started out working kind of more in a culinary position. I did a kind of a certificate, which is like City and Guilds, kind of training on the job in terms of a chefing role for a long time. And then from there, would have kind of gone back to college again and done like a degree course to kind of arm me with a few more skills in terms of like project management and business acumen and things like that. And then I've gone back out into industry, again, working as kind of more specialized, working as a baker for a good bit of time. And then I came back again, I suppose, because I am a lifelong learner, and this is part of the reason for joining Leyton as well. But I came back, I did a master's in food science, and that kind of took me into a role where I was able to kind of work a little bit more hands-on, do some kind of more day-to-day kind of innovation, and I like that space, and I was in that space for a long time. Like Breen said, eventually joined a large-scale food manufacturing company that sites in Ireland, the UK, and Germany. And I got a great opportunity there to really kind of round out my project management skills. Like Kieran, I'd be into the continuous improvement, working on lean projects. I would have also been managing a small team of product developers and chefs. Would have worked right across the business, doing kind of any cross-functional role with any kind of team in the business, including finance, logistics, planning, purchasing, but definitely out on the factory floor, kind of refining things and seeing how things are running, and kind of taking it, end to end in terms of briefs coming in to kind of products going out, and kind of having that kind of commercial impact on the business. And I think that's probably goes on to the second question in terms of why I would join Leyton, or why would I move out of something where I clearly enjoyed the role. I did it well. I was comfortable, and there was a good path in terms of career there. So I suppose what I see and why I joined Leyton really was that I didn't really see it as kind of a move away or a step away from the R&D that I had practiced and I'd really worked on for over 10 years, but it was kind of more about taking what I'd learned and kind of helping more businesses innovate. And I kind of echo a little bit what Paul would have said, in terms of helping small businesses in particular. I mean, Ireland Inc. is kind of my personal mission, and it's really about kind of helping kind of translate other companies' technical work into measurable kind of value. So that's where I kind of see myself bringing a lot of impact. So in the role that I've stepped into here in Leyton, I still have a lot of opportunity to keep learning. I get cross-sectoral expertise. I've worked on a number of sectors since I've come in, and I suppose it's that kind of Leyton mission, embed yourself within the R&D environment and kind of contribute to the long-term success of teams. So it's not a complete career change, I suppose. It's more like a natural evolution, where I'd spent a long time kind of leading R&D and innovation in a manufacturing environment and kind of translating a lot of technical challenges into commercial outcomes. I realized that's really the part of the work that I found kind of most rewarding. And that's really what I enjoy about Leyton. It's about kind of helping others articulate their innovation, structure it for funding, and then kind of demonstrate the real value in their business. And that's what I do every day that I come into Leyton. And it's like Kieran said, it's not really about kind of having a load of degrees or anything like that. I suppose it's a consultancy position, but it really gives you an opportunity to apply your experience across multiple sectors. So, not just food, not just manufacturing, but kind of the other layers that go along with the two. So, you keep learning about new technologies, you hear about other people's processes, but you kind of realize as well that you're ready for like a new level of professional growth. So you're kind of moving from being internal within a company to kind of being more in a client-facing advisory position, and your impact is a lot more broader, and it's a lot more measurable. And as Conal has said and everybody else has said, I suppose Leyton Ireland is building, and I see myself building with Leyton Ireland in terms of deeper sector expertise over the next few years, mentoring newer consultants when they come in, contributing overall to the development of the R&D practice in Ireland. So I see it as a place where I can grow, add real value, and be part of the company's journey as it expands.
Absolutely. I mean, I would agree with that. I think, some of those things that resonated with me there is just even that you're saying you stepped out of a role where you were comfortable to take on a new challenge. And I think, there's a saying that, life begins when you're willing to step 5% out of your comfort zone, right? So I commend you for taking the leap just like everybody else on this call. And I'm excited to see kind of what comes of your Leyton journey. So thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
Appreciate that. So what I would like to do then is actually finish out the show with the question that I was originally going to ask, and perhaps we can touch base with Michael separately. But so to finish out today's episode, I wanted to offer a question up to the group. There's no particular order. You can just jump in with whatever insights you'd like to share. But, this podcast is called the Life at Leyton podcast, as you know. And I guess what I wanted to ask is, when you think of life at Leyton, what does that mean to you? And, I'd like to kind of go back to a question that I had floated to Connell earlier on in the episode. Has there been anything that surprised you so far as you begin this journey at Leyton?
I suppose one thing that surprised me when I joined is the support and resources that are at the disposal of salespeople. So myself as a BDM, obviously what my role is to book meetings, attend meetings, and to guide through prospective clients through what actual R&D tax credits are, our process here at Leyton, and how we can fit in as part of an external team of consultants working closely with their business. With the sales enablement team, you have dedicated professionals in-house that at any time you can pick up the phone, give them a call, run through maybe a couple of issues that you might be facing, whether that's at the start of the sales pipeline in terms of initial outreach, or whether that's kind of post first meeting in terms of getting the deal closed. The other part as well is, we have dedicated SDRs. We've Connell on this call. So, while you're working on getting meetings in the diary, closing deals, delivering R&D proposals to clients, you have lads like Connell in the background who are setting meetings. So you're constantly staying busy. And really, Leyton, I know we do sell R&D tax credits as a service, and as Dara Gaffney over says, it's very much a sales machine. Like, we could sell anything with the internal processes and capabilities we have, and it makes your life a lot easier as a business development manager or as an SDR, when you're dealing with good internal capabilities and also competent technical and financial consultants.
Thanks for that, Matthew. Anybody else?
Yeah, when I think about life at Leyton, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the collaboration. Obviously being part of the commercial team, I'm speaking with a lot of innovative businesses, every day. But what really sets Leyton apart is the support network that we have behind those conversations. I mean, we're working alongside highly experienced technical and financial consultants, as you can see from our conversation today, who bring a huge depth of experience. So it's never a case of you're not on your own selling essentially, but there's really a really good team environment where everyone's working towards the same goal. We're all here to help clients maximize the support available to them, whether it's R&D tax credits, which is our main area of expertise, but also there is a lot more there as well, grants and other innovation funding. But we have the direct access to these specialists, who are here to support us as a sort of a sales team. So for me, that makes Leighton very rewarding. You're constantly learning from colleagues, and it's just been great having the consultants in the office with us as well, to be able to get feedback and ask questions. So it's been really great having those conversations in the office.
And is there anyone else that just wants to close this part of it out?
Go on ahead. I'll throw something out there. I'd say the freedom and the trust in Leighton has been surprising, especially sort of on the back of what Ashley said, for it being a big company. I think a lot of times people have heard horror stories about massive global consultancies where you come in and you're just a cog in the machine and you're pigeonholed, or stories where you're recruited because of your background or abilities, but then ultimately you never get to use them to their extent. Whereas I think Leighton does a great job of bringing people in and recognising that they've brought them in to do a job. So those people are very often the best place to identify how the job should be done. So whether that's how you deal with your clients, whether you want to go down and see them on site, manage things remotely, take initiative on the templates or engagements that you use, Leighton is very open to letting you identify the best way to work and pursue it, rather than being rigid. This is what we do. We're a massive company. We're not changing. So that freedom to take initiative and responsibility and work away yourself has been quite refreshing, especially in such a big company.
Absolutely, I would say the same. I mean, when I joined back in August, it was just myself and Dara up in a tiny little bird's nest box room office, and a lot of the time it was just me kind of being trusted to kind of put the headphones in and do the job. And obviously things have grown a lot since then, but the level of trust and flexibility and enablement, to go back to even some of the things Conal was saying in terms of the ongoing continuous support, I think it goes a long way to creating the culture that we have now. So I think we've more or less got to the end of this episode, but I really appreciate the time that you've all given to us today. Your insights have been very, very, honestly, even interesting for me. I think this was an interesting exercise for us to do as a team as well, to get to know each other that little bit better. But in terms of kind of what we needed to cover for today, I think we more or less we covered it all. So thank you so much for your time today, guys. And this has been this month's episode of the Life at Leyton podcast, the podcast where we explore the people and stories that shape our business. I hope I did a decent enough job at doing that today. And if you enjoyed this episode, or if you have any feedback, or if you just feel like being sound and giving us a 5-star rating on wherever you get your podcasts, it'd be much appreciated. It really helps, and it gets this podcast out to a wider audience. But until next time, thanks very much, and I'll talk to you soon.